My name is Nora Caldwell, and I am 32 years old. For most of my adult life, my father did not treat me like his daughter. He treated me like the woman he could call when the floors needed polishing, the dishes needed washing, and the family image needed saving. My younger sister was the one he introduced with pride. I was the one he pointed toward the kitchen. The night before Christmas Eve, I was in my Chicago apartment reviewing a contract that could change my company forever when my phone rang. I already knew that tone in his voice before he finished the first sentence. He was not asking, he was assigning. My sister had important guests coming to the house in New Jersey the next evening. 15 people, he said, like that made it small. Her boss would be there, a man my father had been trying to impress for months. Then he added, "Do not make this difficult." My mother was in the background, calm and cruel, saying this was the only thing I was good for. Cooking, cleaning, serving, smiling, disappearing. That was the role they had written for me. But what they did not know was that while they were planning to put me behind their stove, that same CEO already had my name in a confidential boardroom packet. He had read my proposal. He had seen my photograph. And on December 26th, he was supposed to decide whether my company deserved a multi-million-dollar contract. So I smiled into the phone, said I understood, and booked a flight to New York. The next night, their kitchen was empty. My sister was pale, my father was panicking, and the CEO he wanted to impress froze in the hallway when he saw my picture on the wall. Before I tell you what happened after that, tell me what the weather is like where you are right now. Does it match your mood today? And if you have ever been treated like the invisible one in your own family, stay with me, because this story is about the night I finally stopped shrinking so other people could feel bigger. By the time that call ended, I sat in silence with my phone still in my hand, not because I was shocked, but because I was finally tired of pretending this was normal. For 15 years, every holiday in my family had followed the same script. My younger sister walked through the front door like a guest of honor, wearing something expensive and laughing with people who were told she was brilliant, ambitious, the future of the family. I walked through the side entrance with grocery bags cutting into my fingers because someone had already decided I belonged closer to the oven than the dinner table. At Thanksgiving, I carved the turkey while my father told his friends about my sister's marketing career in Manhattan. At Easter, I washed wine glasses while my mother showed everyone my sister's new office view. On Christmas morning, I was the one picking wrapping paper off the floor while everyone else posed for photos. And whenever someone asked what I did, my father would wave his hand like my life was a minor detail. "She works with computers," he would say, "or she does some kind of consulting." Then he would lower his voice and add, "Nothing serious." That was the part that always hurt the most. Not that they misunderstood me, but that they had never been curious enough to understand me in the first place. I built Harbor Point Risk Advisory in Chicago from a borrowed desk, a used laptop, and a level of stubbornness that only comes from being underestimated your entire life. My company helped executives prepare for their worst days: data breaches, public scandals, leadership failures, financial panic, reputation disasters. I train people with corner offices and private jets how to stay calm when the walls started closing in. I had 38 employees, clients in 6 states, and a waiting list of companies willing to pay more for one emergency simulation than my father believed I made in a year. But at home, none of that existed. At home, I was still the daughter who knew where the good silver was kept. The truth was, I stopped telling them about my life because every attempt became another humiliation. 3 years earlier, I mentioned that I had landed a regional banking client. My mother smiled without looking up from her phone and said, "That is nice, sweetheart, but your sister just got invited to a leadership brunch." 2 years earlier, I tried to explain what crisis advisory meant. My father laughed and said, "So companies pay you to tell them not to panic. Must be nice pretending that is a real business." Last year, when I bought my condo in Chicago, I almost told them. I even typed the message. I just closed on my first place. But then my sister posted a photo from a rooftop bar in Manhattan and my mother commented, "Our successful girl." I deleted my message and unpacked alone. That was the strange thing about being invisible. After a while, you stopped asking people to see you. You just built a life where their blindness could no longer reach you. That December, my company was preparing for the biggest contract we had ever pursued. Westbridge Capital, one of the most influential investment firms in Manhattan, wanted a full executive crisis readiness program for its senior leadership team. If they signed, it would be worth $2.4 million and would allow us to open a New York office by spring. For 3 months, my team and I had lived inside that proposal. We built simulations, legal response maps, media training modules, internal communication drills, and a custom leadership assessment that could expose weak decision-making before a real crisis did. The CEO of Westbridge had reviewed every page. His team had requested my direct presence at the final meeting. They wanted the founder in the room. They wanted the person who had built Harbor Point from nothing. My family wanted the same person to polish serving trays. When my father said my sister's boss would be at the dinner, I did not react right away. I did not ask for his name. I did not give them the satisfaction of hearing my voice change. But after I hung up, I opened my email and saw the signature at the bottom of the latest Westbridge message. Nathaniel Price, Chief Executive Officer. The same man my father had been chasing for months. The same man my sister was desperate to impress. The same man who had already seen my company profile, my headshot, and my proposal summary. I stared at his name for a long time, and for the first time in years, I did not feel small. I felt the universe quietly moving a chair into place at a table my family never thought I belonged at. The next morning, my father sent a message at 6:12 a.m. It was not good morning. It was not, can you help? It was a list. Vacuum the first floor. Wipe down the guest bathroom. Pick up white flowers, not cheap ones. Prepare appetizers by 5. Dinner by 7. Clean as you go. Wear something plain. Do not argue with your mother about the table setting. I read the message once, then set my phone face down on the counter and made coffee. There was a time when a message like that would have made my stomach tighten. I would have started calculating flights, grocery lists, train times, how to make myself useful enough that no one could accuse me of being selfish. But that morning, the only thing on my calendar that mattered was Westbridge. My team had a final prep call at 9. My flight to New York was at 6. My presentation was almost finished but not perfect yet. And unlike my family's dinner, my work involved people who actually depended on me. At 9 sharp, I joined the video call. My operations director walked us through the final risk model. My communications lead reviewed the mock press crisis. My legal consultant confirmed that the executive scenarios matched Westbridge's industry exposure. At the end of the call, my assistant said, "Nora, Nathaniel Price's office confirmed again. They want you leading the final session personally." I looked at my phone, still face down on the counter. Of course they did. At 10:30, my mother called. I let it ring. Then my sister called. Then my father again. Finally, I answered. He did not ask why I had ignored them. He started with, "What time are you getting here tomorrow?" I said, "I'm not coming." The silence on the line was almost peaceful. Then he laughed once, the kind of laugh people use when they think reality will rearrange itself for them. "Don't be ridiculous," I repeated. "I'm not coming. I have a business meeting in New York." My mother's voice cut in from somewhere behind him. "On Christmas Eve? How convenient," I said. "The meeting is on the 26th, but I need to be in New York tomorrow." My father's tone sharpened. "Your sister has 15 guests coming. Important guests. You knew we needed you." "No," I said. "You assumed you could use me." That was when the call turned ugly. My father said I was embarrassing the family. My mother said I was jealous of my sister. My sister grabbed the phone and hissed that Nathaniel Price was coming, and if I ruined her chance to impress him, she would never forgive me. I almost told her he was coming to see me 2 days later. I almost said, "The man you are trying to impress has been reading my work for 3 months." But something stopped me. They did not deserve a warning. They deserved a mirror. So I said, "I'm sending you several emergency options. Private chefs, holiday platters, cleaning crews, and event staff. Call them now." My father snapped, "We don't need strangers in our house. We need you to do your job." "My job," I repeated quietly. Yes, he said. For once, be useful. That was the last sentence I needed to hear. I opened the family group chat and sent 5 emergency contacts with phone numbers, prices, and notes about availability. I knew at least 2 of them could still put together a respectable dinner if my family called immediately and paid the holiday rate. My mother replied with one sentence: "We should not have to pay strangers when we have a daughter." My sister sent, "You are disgusting." My father sent nothing, which somehow said more than both of them. I turned off notifications and packed my suitcase. Navy suit, black heels, laptop, presentation clicker, printed proposal, emergency backup drive. The tools of the woman I actually was, not the daughter they invented because it made their lives easier. On the ride to the airport, Chicago was gray and cold outside the car window, the kind of winter afternoon that made every building look sharper. My phone kept lighting up, but I did not touch it. At security, I checked my email instead. Westbridge had sent the final attendee list. Nathaniel Price, Chief Financial Officer, General Counsel, Chief People Officer, Head of Corporate Communications, Board Observer. Every person in that room would be there to evaluate whether I was worth trusting with their company's most sensitive weaknesses. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, my family was evaluating whether I was worth more than free labor. When the plane lifted off, I looked down at the lights below and felt something inside me settle. I was not abandoning my family. I was abandoning the role they forced me into. There is a difference. And it took me 15 years to learn it. I checked into my hotel in Midtown Manhattan a little after 9 on Christmas Eve. The lobby was decorated with garland, gold ornaments, and the kind of quiet luxury that used to make me feel like an imposter before I understood I had earned my place in rooms like that. My suite had a desk facing the city, and I set up my laptop there before I even took off my coat. Outside, Manhattan moved like nothing could ever stop it. Inside, my family's group chat was beginning to collapse. At 5:18 p.m., my sister sent, "Where did you put the serving trays?" At 5:24, my mother sent, "The guest bathroom towels are not folded correctly." At 5:37, my father sent, "Enough. Get on a train now." I did not answer. I was rehearsing the opening of my Westbridge presentation. Leadership is not revealed during calm conditions. It is revealed under pressure. That line felt almost too perfect, considering what was happening in Montclair. By 6, the messages came faster. My sister realized there were no appetizers. My mother discovered that no one had picked up flowers. My father found the dining room table half set, because apparently everyone had expected me to arrive early and fix whatever they had not bothered to finish. At 6:21, my sister wrote, "You are seriously doing this to us." At 6:28, my mother wrote, "Your father is furious." At 6:40, my father left a voicemail. I did not listen, but the transcription appeared on my screen. "You have 1 hour to stop acting like a selfish child and get here." I looked at it, then returned to my slides. At 7, guests began arriving. I knew because my sister started texting in broken sentences. "They are here. The kitchen is empty. Mom is saying you had a breakdown. Dad is acting normal, but he is sweating. Nathaniel is here. He looks confused." That last line made me pause. Not because I felt guilty, because I understood exactly what was happening. My family had spent years building a version of me that could only exist if no one looked too closely. Now, someone important had walked into their house, and reality was starting to smell like panic and cold takeout. From the messages, I pieced together the disaster. My mother greeted the guests with forced laughter, saying dinner was running a little behind. My sister tried to pour wine and make small talk with Westbridge executives, but she kept checking her phone. My father cornered Nathaniel Price near the fireplace and began talking about his construction company, Caldwell Custom Homes, hinting that he was looking for the right investment partner to help expand into luxury renovations. He probably thought he sounded confident. I knew he sounded desperate. By 7:30, there was still no food. Someone asked if they could help in the kitchen. My mother said no too quickly. My sister called 3 restaurants, closed, fully booked, no delivery. My father finally called one of the emergency numbers I had sent, then hung up when he heard the Christmas Eve surcharge. He would rather serve embarrassment for free than pay professionals what they were worth. At 7:52, my sister texted, "We are getting grocery trays. I hope you are happy." I was not happy. That is what people like my family never understand. Boundaries are not always joyful. Sometimes they are quiet and heavy. Sometimes you sit alone in a hotel room on Christmas Eve, knowing the people who raised you are humiliating themselves because they could not imagine treating you like a person. But I was not sad enough to save them from consequences they had chosen. Around 8:20, the food arrived. Cold sandwich trays, plastic tubs of pasta salad, fried chicken in cardboard boxes, a bakery cake with Merry Christmas written in red icing because it was the only one left. My mother had to place grocery store food on her expensive serving platters while pretending this had been the plan all along. My sister texted, "Nathaniel barely touched anything." At 8:41, another message. "Dad just told him you were unreliable." At 8:45, Mom said you have always been difficult. At 8:48, Sloan wrote, "He heard Dad call you useless." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. There it was. Not the empty kitchen, not the bad food, not the ruined networking opportunity. The real disaster was that they could not stop exposing themselves. Even with important people watching, they blamed the person who was not there instead of taking responsibility for what they had failed to do. That was not a hosting problem. That was a character problem. And unfortunately for them, the CEO in their living room specialized in reading character before he signed checks. The message that changed everything came at 9:17 p.m. My sister wrote, "Why is Nathaniel staring at the hallway wall?" I sat up slowly. My pulse did not race, but everything inside me became still. I knew that hallway. I knew the wall she meant. My mother had turned it into a family achievement gallery, although the word family was generous. Most of the frames were my sister. Debate trophy, college graduation, first day at her Manhattan office, a photo with my parents at some charity luncheon where she wore a white dress and looked like the daughter they had ordered from a catalog. I had exactly 3 photos on that wall. One from high school graduation, where my father's hand rested on my sister's shoulder even though it was my ceremony. One old family Christmas photo where I was holding a tray of cookies. And one photo my aunt had mailed to my mother the year before, after seeing it online. It showed me on stage at a Women in Leadership Forum in Chicago, wearing a black suit, holding a microphone, with the words, "Risk Leadership Summit" behind me. My mother had put it in a frame because my aunt had made a comment about how impressive I looked, but she placed it low on the wall, almost hidden between larger pictures of my sister. She never asked what the event was. She never asked why I was speaking there. She probably thought it was some local networking thing, but Nathaniel Price had seen that exact image before. It was in my speaker profile, attached to the Harbor Point proposal, and on the second page of the executive summary his team had reviewed. At 9:20, my sister texted again. "He asked if you are my sister." Then nothing. For 12 minutes, the chat went silent. Later, I learned what happened during those 12 minutes from 2 different people who were there. Nathaniel had stopped in the hallway on his way to get his coat. He looked at the photo, then stepped closer. My sister, trying to sound casual, said, "Oh, that is my older sister. She does some freelance consulting thing." Nathaniel turned and asked, "Nora Caldwell is your sister?" My sister laughed nervously and said, "Yes, but she is not really involved in anything serious." My father joined them and, because he had no instinct for danger when he believed he was above someone, said, "Nora likes to make small things sound important. She has always been like that." My mother added, "She is good in practical ways, though. Usually she helps us with dinner." That is when Nathaniel's expression changed. He did not raise his voice. He did not embarrass them immediately. Men like him did not need volume to make a room feel cold. He simply asked, "What exactly does Nora do?" My father shrugged. "Consulting. Some office thing." My mother said, "We have never really understood it." My sister, desperate to recover, said, "She is not part of this evening. I am the one who works with Westbridge." Nathaniel looked from one face to another and asked, "Have any of you ever visited her office?" No one answered. He asked, Have you ever asked about her clients? Silence. He asked, Do you know why she is in New York this week? My father frowned and said, She claims she has a business meeting. Nathaniel nodded slowly and said, I see. That was it. 2 words. I see. But from what I was told, the entire room felt the shift. My father tried to pull him back into conversation about the construction investment. Nathaniel did not take the bait. My mother tried to joke that every family had one dramatic child. Nathaniel did not smile. My sister tried to pitch a campaign idea for Westbridge's community outreach program. He said, Tonight may not be the appropriate time. Then he thanked them for the invitation, put on his coat, and left before dessert. At 9:39, my sister finally texted me. What did you do? I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the question was so perfectly backwards. I had done nothing. That was the entire point. I had not exposed them. I had not interrupted their dinner. I had not called Nathaniel. I had not sent him proof. I had simply removed myself from the role that kept their illusion alive, and the whole thing fell apart without me holding it up. At 10:04, my father left another voicemail. I listened to that one. His voice was low and furious. I do not know what game you are playing, but you made us look like fools tonight. You will call me in the morning and explain yourself. I deleted it. Then I opened my Westbridge deck one more time and revised the final slide. The original title was Leading Through Crisis. I changed it to Accountability Under Pressure. It was more accurate. Before we go further, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone underestimate you so completely that the truth felt almost impossible when it finally appeared? Would you have explained yourself right away, or would you have let them discover the truth in the most unforgettable way possible? Tell me what you would have done, because the next morning was when my father learned that the woman he called useless was the person standing between him and the investment he wanted most. On December 26th, I arrived at Westbridge Capital 20 minutes early. Their office was on a high floor in Manhattan, all glass walls, quiet carpets, and conference rooms named after old bridges. I wore a charcoal suit, carried a leather portfolio, and felt the strange calm that comes when you know you have already survived worse rooms than the one you are about to enter. A receptionist led me to the main boardroom, where my team had already connected the presentation. Through the windows, the city looked sharp and bright, as if Christmas had washed it clean. At exactly 9, Nathaniel Price walked in with his CFO, General Counsel, Chief People Officer, and Head of Communications. He shook my hand first. Ms. Caldwell, he said, it is good to finally meet you in person. His face gave nothing away. I said, likewise. Then he held my gaze for half a second longer and added, I believe I was in your parents' home 2 nights ago. The room went very still. My team knew enough about my family to understand that this was not small talk. I could have apologized. I could have over-explained. I could have tried to separate myself from the disaster. Instead, I said, Then, you have already seen a live demonstration of what happens when people confuse control with leadership. For 1 second, no one moved. Then, Nathaniel smiled. Not a polite smile, a real one. He pulled out a chair and sat down. That is exactly why I wanted to continue this meeting. I took my place at the front of the room and began. The first slide showed a simple sentence. Pressure does not create character. It reveals it. I walked them through the program HarborPoint had designed for Westbridge. A simulated data breach before market open. A false internal leak involving executive compensation. A hostile media inquiry. A board-level conflict over delayed disclosure. Employee panic. Investor pressure. Social media escalation. Every scenario was built to test not what leaders said they believed, but what they did when blame became convenient. As I spoke, I could feel the room leaning in. This was not theory to them. It was risk. It was money. It was reputation. It was the difference between a company that survived a crisis and one that became a cautionary tale. Nathaniel asked sharp questions. His legal counsel challenged our timeline. His communications head wanted more detail on message discipline. His people officer asked how we measured leadership accountability after the simulation. I answered every question clearly, because this was my world. Not the kitchen. Not the hallway where my father barked orders. This. Strategy, pressure, decision-making, consequences. Near the end, Nathaniel folded his hands and said, "I want to address something directly. 2 nights ago, I watched a family blame an absent woman for their own lack of preparation. I watched people speak about you with contempt while standing under a photograph that proved they had never bothered to learn who you were. Then today, I watched you explain crisis leadership better than anyone I have brought into this company." He turned to his team. "That contrast tells me everything I need to know." The CFO nodded. The general counsel closed the contract folder and pushed it toward me. Nathaniel said, "Westbridge would like to move forward with Harbor Point. Full program, 2-year engagement, $2.4 million, New York office support included." For a moment, I did not hear anything but my own breathing, not because I doubted I deserved it, but because some part of me still remembered being 17, standing over a sink full of dishes while my father told guests my sister was the one with promise. I signed the contract with a steady hand. My team exhaled around me. Nathaniel signed after me, then stood and shook my hand again. "Congratulations, Ms. Caldwell." After champagne was poured, his communications director asked if they could announce the partnership on LinkedIn. I approved the wording. There was nothing personal in it, nothing cruel, just a professional announcement. Westbridge Capital was proud to partner with Harbor Point Risk Advisory and its founder and CEO, Nora Caldwell, to strengthen executive crisis readiness and leadership accountability. They tagged my company and me. That was enough. Within an hour, the post spread through Manhattan finance circles. Then it reached New Jersey. Then it reached the people who had attended the Christmas Eve disaster. A former guest commented, "Wait, is this the same Nora from the Caldwell dinner?" Another wrote, "Incredible partnership. Small world." Someone from my sister's office liked the post, then sent it around. My phone began to light up. My sister first. "Is this real?" Then my mother. "Why is everyone calling me?" Then my father. "Answer your phone now." I did not answer. I was standing in a room full of people who respected my work, and I refused to step out of that moment to manage the emotions of people who had never managed their cruelty toward me. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel asked to speak privately. He told me my father had called him, trying to explain that there had been a misunderstanding. Nathaniel's voice was calm, but there was steel under it. I told him there was no misunderstanding. He asked me to reconsider his investment proposal. I told him I could not trust the judgment of a man who failed to recognize leadership in his own daughter while her photograph was hanging in his hallway. That sentence traveled faster than the LinkedIn post. By evening, my father's potential investor had backed out. 2 members of his golf club had already heard about the dinner. My mother had been asked by the charity board to step back from organizing the winter gala until things calmed down. And my sister's promotion review at Westbridge was paused. Not because she was related to me, but because she had used a family dinner as a career shortcut and then blamed another woman when it collapsed. That night, I finally opened my family's messages. My father wrote, "You destroyed my opportunity." My mother wrote, "You humiliated us." My sister wrote, "You could have told us." I typed one answer to all 3. "You could have asked." The fallout did not arrive all at once. It came in waves, each one hitting the image my family had spent years polishing. My father's construction company lost the investment he had been chasing for months. The official reason was strategic misalignment, but everyone knew the real reason. No investor wanted to hand money to a man whose judgment had become a country club joke. For weeks, people asked him how he had managed to invite a CEO to dinner without realizing his own daughter was already doing business with that CEO. At the golf club, someone apparently called it the 15-person dinner with zero self-awareness. My mother suffered in a different way. She had built her life around being admired by the right women in the right rooms. Charity luncheons, committee meetings, donor dinners, holiday planning boards. After Christmas Eve, those rooms became colder. People did not confront her directly at first. They simply stopped asking her to lead. Then the Winter Gala Committee sent a careful email saying they wanted to move in a new direction. My sister's consequence was quieter, but more painful. At Westbridge, she was not fired. Nathaniel was too professional for that. but she was removed from a high-visibility partnership project and told she needed to rebuild trust through consistency, judgment, and accountability. For the first time in her life, no one rushed to protect her from the result of her own behavior. Meanwhile, I worked. Harbor Point opened its New York office earlier than planned. We hired 12 new employees in the first quarter. Our crisis readiness program became one of the most requested services we offered. A business journal asked me for an interview about leadership under pressure, and when the reporter asked where my confidence came from, I almost laughed. Confidence was not where I started. Survival was. For years, I had learned to stay calm while people misnamed me, underestimated me, reduced me. It turned out that skill was valuable in boardrooms too. 6 weeks after the Westbridge announcement, my father sent a message that did not sound like him. "Nora, I would like to meet. Not to argue, to listen." I stared at it for a long time before agreeing. I chose the location. A quiet coffee shop in Manhattan, neutral but closer to my world than theirs. When they arrived, they looked smaller than I remembered. My father's shoulders were lower. My mother's makeup was perfect, but her eyes were tired. My sister sat without checking her phone, which may have been the first honest sign of change I had ever seen from her. Before anyone could begin, I placed one sheet of paper on the table. "These are my terms," I said. "If you want any relationship with me, this is where we start." They read silently. Equal respect, no exceptions. No more treating me like unpaid labor. A real apology without blaming me for your embarrassment. Public acknowledgement that I am the CEO of Harbor Point and that you were wrong about my life. Individual therapy and family therapy if we are going to rebuild anything. My mother inhaled sharply at the word therapy, but my father did not let her speak first. He looked at me and said, "I am sorry. Not for being caught. Not for losing the investment. I am sorry because I used you as a tool and called it family." I waited. He continued, "I liked having you in that role because it made my life easier. And when you became successful, I did not see it because seeing it would have forced me to admit how badly I had treated you." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but for once I did not rush to comfort her. She said, "I was cruel because I was afraid. Your sister fit the story I wanted to tell about our family. You did not. You were independent, and I punished you for it." Then my sister spoke quietly. "I liked being the favorite. I let them make you small because it made me feel bigger." At work, when Nathaniel looked at me after that dinner, I realized I had become exactly the kind of person I pretend to criticize. "I am sorry, Nora. I did not forgive them that day." Forgiveness is not a performance, and it is not a prize people earn by saying the right words once. But I did tell them the door was not locked. It was guarded. If they wanted to come through it, they would have to change their behavior for longer than one emotional conversation. Over the next year, they tried. Imperfectly, sometimes awkwardly, but they tried. My father corrected people when they called me a consultant in that dismissive tone. My mother told her charity circle that she had been wrong about me, and yes, it cost her pride, which was exactly why it mattered. My sister went to therapy and stopped asking me for favors disguised as emergencies. The following Christmas, I hosted dinner in my Chicago condo. Not because they demanded it, because I chose it. And I did not cook. I hired a professional private dining team, paid their full rate, tipped them well, and sat at the head of my own table while everyone else was served. My father watched one of the servers call me Miss Caldwell, and for the first time, he did not look embarrassed. He looked proud. During dinner, my mother raised her glass and said, "To Nora, who built a life we should have seen much sooner." It was not a perfect ending. Real healing rarely is, but it was an honest beginning. What I learned is something I hope you remember if you are listening from a room where people still make you feel small. Your value does not decrease because someone refuses to recognize it. Love should not require you to disappear. Family should not mean unpaid labor, silent pain, or lifelong permission to disrespect you. Education is not only what we learn in school. Sometimes the most valuable knowledge comes from finally understanding that boundaries are not cruelty. They are self-respect. They teach people how to love you without owning you. They teach you how to stop confusing sacrifice with worth. I did not win because my family was humiliated. I won because I chose myself without destroying myself. I let success speak. But I also let healing have a chance, only after accountability arrived first. So if you have ever had to stand up for your own value in front of the people who were supposed to protect it, share your story below. Someone reading your words may be exactly where I once was, waiting for proof that they are allowed to stop shrinking. The team behind Revenge Broken Trust is working hard to create meaningful, emotional, and well-crafted stories for our audience. This is a fictional story created for educational purposes, with the goal of sharing valuable lessons and positive messages through dramatic storytelling. The villain in this story shows how damaging pride, favoritism, and emotional neglect can be inside a family. Nora's father did not just underestimate her, he tried to define her worth by how useful she was to him. If you were in Nora's position, how would you handle someone who treated you like a servant for years?